1. This happened yesterday, and I still can't believe it happened. I'm still freaked out. I'll explain it all at the end, so I'm sorry if it gets a bit confusing as I'm telling it. I recently moved into a new flat, 3 weeks, and I'm sharing it with my sister. The only person we know properly is a single mum who lives in the apartment next door to us. Ever since we moved in, she's been giving us advice and helping us out with things. We don't know anyone else properly yet. From what we've seen of our other neighbors, they're mostly couples in their 30s and 40s, or older guys who live alone. We're probably the youngest ones there. We're both females. I'm 18 and my sister is only 16. Today I was out with friends, and then later on I went to the gym. After this I went to get my sister so we could go out for some food. We got in around 10 p.m. Me and my sister got into our pajamas and were just sitting around and watching TV when our buzzer rang. I jumped up to answer it, and it turned out to be our neighbor, the single mum. I asked her what was up, and she said that our dad was waiting for us downstairs. Straight away my stomach dropped, and I immediately asked her if she's sure he said he was our dad. The reason I asked her was just to make sure that's what she actually said, but she replied that yeah, he said he was our dad and was asking for us. The neighbor asked me if she could let him up to our flat, but I told her not to do that. I wanted to call out to my sister, but I didn't want to worry her right away. I asked the neighbor not to let him come up yet, and I heard her repeat this to him. I couldn't hear anything for a few minutes after this, and I started to get really worried. At this point, my sister comes up to me and asks who it is. I start to feel really anxious and call out to my neighbor a few times. It must have only been 5 minutes, but it honestly felt like ages when she didn't reply. I was actually about to tell my sister to call the police when eventually she told me that he was gone. She then came up to our flat and explained what went down. She said that she was walking to her flat after finishing work, and she saw a man by the buzzers. At first she assumed that he was just someone who lived there, until he noticed her walking up. He asked for us by name and if she could let him up to our flat. She asked him who he was, and he told her that he was our dad. Now obviously she buzzed us and told us first, as our neighbor doesn't know us that well, so she doesn't know what our dad looks like. She said that because we were young, she didn't want to buzz a strange man up to our flat. She said that her mother instincts kicked in when she heard my hesitation to let him up to the flat. Apparently, after he heard me say that, he got really pushy with her and started trying to move her out of the way. He kept on saying, "It's okay, I'm the dad. Let me in, I'm not going to do anything." She started arguing with him and asking him to tell her his name, but he refused to tell her. She told him that if I don't feel comfortable letting him in, there's no way he's getting in. His reaction was to call her a bitch, and then to get in a car and ride away. Now this is the reason why I hesitated. We haven't spoken to our dad since I was 16. We even considered getting a restraining order from him at one point. He's not our biological father, but we were legally adopted by him when I was 9. He was physically and verbally abusive to our mum, and had started to do the same with me. It got to the point where we had to leave him in the middle of the night. After this, he became very controlling and would secretly follow us and record me and my sister. He has a criminal record as well, and I believe he was convicted of manslaughter in the 80s. I have no idea of the backstory behind that, and I honestly don't want to know. Like I said, we haven't heard from him since, so as soon as she said the word dad, I almost had a panic attack. I asked her to describe him, and she said that because it was dark out, she couldn't really see him. We ended up staying with her because me and my sister were really shaken up. I don't know whether to call the police or not. I don't know if it's our dad or not, as it could easily be someone else. I appreciate any advice. 2. My brothers live in a small apartment building in a very small Midwestern town. The kind of town that if you have no business there, you'd really have no reason to know it exists. The building they live in is a long, single-level building. Tenants park on the street and then walk up a ramp or deck that wraps around the back of the building, where the 3 apartments all have their own door. It's pretty dark, leaving their place until you get to the street, where there are obviously street lamps. This town of 600 has no reason to be afraid, although there are occasionally items stolen from cars or garages, as everyone, not me, seems to keep their things unlocked. I'm usually tense when leaving their place, but solely because I run on the side of paranoid, and have a penchant for horror films and believe bad news can reach out and grab anyone at any time. I am a 6'5", 29-year-old male, and I always carry a knife. In fact, I feel strange without one. My brothers and I were bullshitting while passing the controller playing GTA 5. You know, create chaos, pass it when you die. My girlfriend was calling fairly frequently, and I hate answering the phone around people. Being that it was getting late, I decided to head to my car and call her back there. That night it was probably somewhere between 25 to 30 degrees, so not unbearable for Midwesterners, but no doubt cold. I remember there was little to no wind, so very quiet. I usually walk to my car with my knife in hand, again out of paranoia. Not that I'm looking to shank any of the other two tenants. That could have surprised me coming around the corner on their way home, and my way out. I get into my car and notice nothing out of the ordinary. I was parked under the streetlights, so the majority of the area was well lit. There was a patch of darkness behind my car, where another tenant was parked directly behind me. I fire up my sexy Buick Park Avenue and let it run a while I call my girlfriend back. We are talking for a good half hour to 40 minutes before I hear what sounded like something hitting my passenger window or brushing my door. This puts me on high alert as I turn my head quickly and see nothing but darkness running up the creek. I look behind me and see nothing but the vehicle parked behind me. I did mention this to my girlfriend as I realize, with my car thawing out, some of the ice stuck on the doors has probably fallen. As the conversation continues, I hear a similar sound from what sounded like my back door, and then my driver door. Eventually, I caught a chunk of ice with my own eyes fall from my side mirror, and rest assured, that's all it was. It's now been north of an hour, right? And it's fucking cold out. My car is plenty warm, and with my phone about to die, I tell my girlfriend I'll call her back when I get home and put it on the charger. From the curb to the stop sign at the end of the street is about 25 to 30 feet away, so I shift into D and roll forward before applying my brakes at the stop sign. I did a double take in my rear view, and about threw up on my dashboard. Under the streetlight, now drenched in the red hue of my brake lights, I see a balled-up black mass slowly start to uncoil. I turn and look with my own eyes behind me, and sure enough, a figure in all black is now standing in front of the other tenant's vehicle that was behind me. I remain at the stop sign, wondering if I'm seeing what I'm seeing, not blinking, holding my breath. Whoever I was looking at just stood there for a minute, body sideways, head turned, looking at me. I'm talking all black. It was difficult to even distinguish features. I thought I could either make out a face mask or a scarf wrapped around the head. Then he turns and casually starts to walk the other direction. I could make out that he was holding something that looked a lot like a pipe or a tire iron. Maybe a large wrench. He was definitely holding something. He just kind of turns slowly and meanders down the block. I freak out internally and finally take my left turn and flip a Louis. I guess you'd say Yui, but inside joke. And speed up Main Street. I go one block and cut down past the local taverns, and another right, hoping to catch this ghoulish creature walking away. I was fucking chilled to the bone right now. I feel the goddamn neighborhood watch. I'm peering into backyards and saw nothing. This guy disappeared. I followed a few porch motion lights that shine into neighbors' lawns. This freaked me out because you could almost follow the path he took into the alleyway. I never found the guy. I later on wondered about any of the neighbors, but they're all elderly folks. The majority of the damn town is elderly folk. I do not have a single clue who it was, what they were doing, like I said. I still think the sounds I was hearing were simply ice melting from my doors. But it was cold out for a man to be sitting outside a running car while I'm just there talking on my phone. My brothers and I talked about this a few nights later for hours, trying to come up with what they could have been wanting to do. What kind of creep sits outside a running car in 30-degree temps with every opportunity to strike, and then once I leave just slips into the night? Granted, this incident just tenfold justifies my theories on paranoia and why no town is safe. If there are people, there is potential for conflict. I mean, man is the most dangerous animal after all. Am I right? 3. I feel I should mention most of my interactions with this guy to show how normal someone can appear, and how little things can all add up. I've written and rewritten this so many times, and the fact I've not been able to post twice kind of makes me feel like it's a sign maybe I shouldn't post. But here we go anyways. I dated 2 guys at university. One, Nick, lasted for a few months. The other, well, it was literally just one date. Before I begin, I must say that I was a little naive, shy, and riddled with anxiety. I mean, I knew enough about the world and wasn't sheltered or anything. But when it comes to male intentions towards me, I had low self-esteem, and couldn't understand why anyone would be interested in me that way. So, assumed all guys were just being friendly. Anyway, this second guy, Dave, I met during my first year at university. He was nice enough. We met in a language class I decided to take as an extra, and he smiled and chatted to me for a while. Honestly, now I think back, I do remember meeting him that day, but I soon forgot about him over the course of the year. One day, towards the end of the year, he came up to me, calling my name, which I was surprised at, to be honest. We hadn't spoke since the first class, and I didn't even remember his name. He asked me if we had any homework from another class, a class I didn't even know he was in. I remember being a bit confused, both that he knew my name and had seen me in a completely different class I hadn't even noticed him in. But I got over it and politely smiled and said we didn't. We talked a bit about how we were going to spend our summers, and that was that. At the very end of the year, our class had a night out drinking, and he was there. My housemate, myself, he and his friend all went to a club afterwards, and he decided to keep buying me drinks. I didn't really notice much, as he was also buying his friend drinks, but at one point, I declined more drinks, saying I didn't want any more. He still bought me a drink, which I drank so as not to appear rude. He dropped off a housemate, and I at home. Probably not the best decision to get into a car with a guy who had been drinking, but I was young and stupid, and we all said goodbye. Now, at some point over that summer, I was abroad, and remember I randomly got a Facebook friend request from him. There was nothing abnormal at this point about Facebook. He seemed like a typical student doing student things. I accepted, and gradually he began to add all my online accounts. During my second year, I dated Nick, and I didn't see Dave at all until the end of that year. By this time, I had broken up with another guy, and Dave asked me to go see a movie with him. I accepted, since he was a nice guy, and he picked me up, we saw the movie, and he dropped me off again. Nothing weird. I thanked him, and he left. We only really talked during the drive there and back, and I began to talk about where I grew up. Now I think back, he never divulged any information about himself, other than that he had been married once. I had honestly not realized he was much older than me, as he had quite a young face, but he never divulged his real age. It wasn't until much later I found this information out. The next night he invited me to his place, however I declined, telling him that honestly I didn't think there could be anything more than friendship between us. He seemed fine about this, and we went back to being friends. This is where things start to get weird. At the end of the final year, I was due to turn 21. We were having a big party back in my hometown, and I invited him along with more of my friends from university. He contacted me and apologized since he wouldn't be able to make it, and offered to take me out to dinner that evening as an early birthday present. I accepted. We went out, ate, and he offered to walk me home. All the way home, he kept commenting that I lived way out of town. It was a 30-minute walk to university and 20 minutes into the city, which isn't long at all. I told him this, but he just kept commenting about how far from campus I lived. The house my 3 housemates and I lived in was in a suburban area, and not exactly rural or anything, so I was confused by this. He really made it seem like I lived miles away. Eventually we got there, and me, being my typical naive self, invited him in, as I felt bad he had walked out of his way to walk me home. 2 of my housemates were there in bed, but one was still up watching TV. The 3 of us chatted for a while before it started to get later and later. My friend and I started dropping hints for him to leave, but he just wasn't. We said we were tired, and he just kept talking, somehow always moving the conversation towards sex. It must have been about 3 or 4 a.m. before my housemate, a lot bolder than me, finally stood up and told him we were going to bed and he had to leave. For years, we thought he just didn't get hints and was a bit dense until a few months ago. Fast forward. and I haven't spoken to him in years. He blocked me on Facebook because we got into a heated debate about politics around 3 years ago. A few months ago, a friend sent me a news article with a comment, "Didn't this guy go to university with us?" Sure enough, there is a picture of Dave. The article is about how he was on trial accused of raping a few women around the time that I knew him at university. It also stated he was almost twice the age of the students at that university at the time. A mature student, and Judge had branded him a dangerous man. Looking back that night, he was reluctant to leave suddenly made a lot more sense. I will forever be thankful to my housemate for not leaving me alone with him in our living room. I'm selfishly happy I never had the experience those girls did. However, my heart goes out to them. I don't know the outcome of the trial, but little things, the hanging around, the constant attempts to turn conversation sexual, the secrecy about himself, buying me drinks after I had declined, it all points to the same thing in my mind. I then noticed he still followed me on Twitter, and morbid curiosity enticed me to take a look. It hasn't been used for a long time. However, there was a link to another account he had, one that sickened me. It contained incoherent ramblings about how women were terrible, getting more and more aggressive with each tweet. It quite frankly made me feel sick. I don't know where he is now, but Dave, let's never, ever meet again. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 469. Enough of that. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. The little mount I've got from a tablet's really starting to annoy me. I need to find the Allen key and tighten it up. It keeps falling down while I'm trying to narrate. I'm trying to give important dramatic performances and the screen just keeps falling flat. That's not very good. Okay, where are we? When does this go up? This will be the 5th of February. Okay, yep, it's going to whoosh by this month. Okay, time for a little Hellfreezer ramble about Star Trek Picard. And can I just say, I have waited so long for something I didn't even realize I was waiting for. I never expected anything new Star Trek related to happen with Patrick Stewart. I believe they had approached him over the years about things, but the stories were never right. And then this crops up, and we hear good things about it, but, we're cautious. And I certainly won't be giving any spoilers away, I promise you that. It's something that if you're a Star Trek fan, you really just need to watch for yourself. We're only 2 episodes in, but so far both episodes, they've been great. Even 1 or 2 things I haven't liked, I've looked at and thought, well, I don't like that they've done that or that they've harkened back to that, but it makes perfect sense from a narrative standpoint. So certainly I'm content to see where they go. And that's another thing I feel is really good about it. It's not perfect, but you still walk away feeling completely satisfied with it. I was watching the latest episode when I got done on Friday there. Curiously, we get them in the UK technically in the same day as America. It's meant to be the day after, but so far Amazon Prime seems to put them up about 11 p.m, which I'm not sure why they do that, but it's good that they do. So I was watching after I got done with work on the Friday, so I had to wait till the Friday. Thought to myself, and it's another thing worth bringing up, that I'd better get into the habit of watching these things as soon as I can, make time to watch them, because things just get spoiled for me these days. And don't get me wrong, I don't mind spoilers in something if I go looking for them, because sometimes it can whet your appetite, or it can prevent you from being too disappointed with something you might not enjoy, but you've got to go looking for them. And twice so far, with not with Picard, thankfully, but with Doctor Who this year, twice, and I won't say what they are because I don't want to ruin things for other people, but there's been big twists that have happened in the past few episodes of Doctor Who, which have been ruined for me, thanks to careless people on Twitter. So I've got into the habit of trying to watch things as quickly as I can, although I still haven't seen the new Doctor Who yet. I started watching it the other night, but I got sleepy, so I'll probably do that when I'm done working today. Although I'm still not overly happy with the idea that a show, getting back to Picard, a show which is basically, it's a streaming service show releasing weekly. That's something I don't like. Either put it out at once, or I'll put out a weekly and we'll still watch it, to be honest with you, but I'd rather they put it out at once. Okay, if I don't stop there, I'm gonna end up revving up for an even longer one. I think we're... Oh dear, okay. We're over 3 minutes of me ranting there, so I'm gonna leave it there. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.